mistakes. When we are in a rush, things are more likely to go wrong in our lives. And I think that's why so many things typically go wrong on Sunday mornings, because typically 99% of us, man, we're in a rush trying to get to church on time on Sunday mornings. And that's one of the main reasons why instead of starting our services right at 10, we pushed it back and we start our countdown at 10, and service actually starts at 10:05. Because if you come in here at 10 o'clock, it's depressing. Like there's 12 people in here and 6 of them are the band standing up here. And it's almost every time I'll be out there walking around and one of our servant leaders, they're not trying to, discourage me, but they'll look at me and they'll be like, man, it's a ghost town in there. And I'm like, thank you. That's the exact encouragement I needed before I got up there and preached. I appreciate you saying that. But listen, I get it. Before I became a pastor, my family and I were the exact same way. Every single Sunday morning without fail. Man, we're in this frantic rush and in such a hurry trying to get to church on time. And nothing good ever came out of that. And so that would always lead to Colby and I getting in an argument on the way to church, or us yelling at the boys. It's so funny how as Christians, we'll be on the way to church and we'll be like, stop, don't touch that, don't hit your brother. And then as soon as we get here, we're just like, hey, good morning, nice to see you guys. And we just put on this little Christian front, and we're nice little Christians when we get here. But nothing good ever came out of that. One time we were in such a hurry to get into church that as we're getting out, I slam the back door and I start walking. Well, as soon as I slam the door, I hear Titus, my oldest son, let out this big yelp. And so I turn around and all 5 of his fingers are stuck in the door. Door is completely closed. I don't even know how it happened. The door is completely closed and his fingers are inside. And I'm like, Bubby, I'm so sorry, but you shouldn't have made us late for church. Like, there's consequences for your actions, son. No. Obviously, I was sick about it, but he was fine. Like, he ended up going right into kids' church, and he was good. But that happened. All those fights, all those things happened because we were in a hurry, because we were in a rush. And I watched this movie here. I watched it enough growing up that I should have known that we are more prone to make mistakes when we are in a rush.
Peter! We slept in!
There's no way on earth we're going to make this plane. It leaves in 45 minutes.
Think positive, Frank.
You be positive. I'll be realistic.
Man, excuse me. I just wanted to let you know that your power is fixed, but the phone lines are a mess. It's going to take Mark Bell a couple of days to patch them up, especially around the holidays.
Gee, thanks. Heather, did you count heads?
11, including me. 5 boys, 6 girls, 4 parents, 2 drivers, and a partridge in a pear tree.
Out of all the reindeers, you know you're the mastermind. Run, Rudolph. Randolph ain't too far behind. Run, Rudolph. Santa's gotta make it to town. Santa, make him hurry, tell him he can take the freeway down. Run, Rudolph. Feeling like a merry-go-round.
Hold the play. Did we miss the flight?
No, you just made it.
Yeah!
Single seats only, coach. Take whatever's free.
I get a window seat.
I'm reeling like a merry-go-round.
You kids are in coach. We're in church.
Seatbelts, B. 480. I'll take your coats.
Thank you.
Fasten your seatbelts, please.
Champagne, please. It's free, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
We made it.
Can you believe it? Hope we didn't forget anything.
So Kevin, poor little Kevin, was left at home by his parents, not once, but twice. And that all happened in those movies. Why? Because they were in a rush. They were in such a hurry that they forgot him. That and the fact that they were just incompetent parents. And you don't really see this when you're younger, before you have kids and you watch that movie, you just watch it, you're like, well, that's an honest mistake. After you have kids, you're like, call CPS and lock those parents up. Like, they have no idea what they're doing. But they're in a hurry. They're in a rush. When we are in a hurry, we're more likely to make mistakes. When we're in a rush, things are more likely to go wrong, which is that's why it's funny when you ask someone how they're doing nowadays. Most of the time they'll say busy. Like, hey, how's it going? Man, I'm busy. Busy with work, busy with family, busy with kids. I'm just really busy, which what they're saying is all day, every day, is they're just running around one thing to the next, always in a rush, always in a hurry. Can you relate? Can you relate to living your life in that much of a hurry all the time? From the moment your feet hit the floor in the morning to the moment your head hits the pillow at night, you are rushing around, going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, always living your life in a hurry. And what's crazy is that we view this busyness. We wear this hurriedness as a badge of honor. We wear it with pride. I'm busy. And we wear this as a badge of honor, when in reality, this is like a sickness that will eventually, if we allow it, it will slowly but surely just wear us out. And it will slowly but surely destroy our minds, our bodies, and our souls. So here's 10 symptoms that you'll experience when you're living your life with what one author called hurry sickness. So you're living your life in this constant state of being in a rush, no breathing room, no margin in your life. So hurry sickness causes, one, irritability. So you find yourself, you're always mad. You get frustrated and annoyed way too easily. 2 is hypersensitivity. So all it takes is just a minor comment or a minor setback to completely ruin and derail your day. 3 is restlessness. Even when you try to slow down, even when you try to rest, you find that you can't anymore because you're so used to rushing around and always go, go, go. 4 is workaholism. So you don't know when to stop working, and you find that even when you try to stop, you can't stop anymore. And so even when you leave the office and you go back home, you may be with your family physically, but you are still at the office mentally and emotionally. 6 is out of order priorities. So you feel disconnected from your identity. You feel completely disconnected from your calling and the purpose that God has for your life. Number 7 is lack of self-care. So you'll say things, well, I just don't have time to sleep. I don't have time to work out. I don't have time to eat healthy and to take care of myself. 8 is escapist behaviors. So you often try to escape reality through distractions of overeating or overdrinking, through the distractions of overindulging in things like social media and Netflix. Number 9 is slippage of spiritual disciplines. So you say, I have no time to read the Bible. I would, but I just don't have time to pray. I don't have time to worship. I don't have time for biblical community in my life. And number 10 is isolation. That you feel disconnected. You feel disconnected from God. You feel disconnected from those around you, and you feel disconnected from your own soul. Corrie ten Boom said this famous quote: "If the devil can't make you bad, he'll make you busy." And so often we don't see this, because busyness in and of itself isn't inherently bad. But what you have to see is that sin and busyness, unchecked, have the same result. That sin and busyness will cut off your connection to what matters most. Sin and busyness will cut off your connection to God, and just don't have time for Him. They'll cut off your connection to your loved ones, the people that mean the most to you, and they will cut off your connection to your very own soul. Pastor Dallas Willard said, "Hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day." You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. This is why when we look at the life of Jesus, he never seemed to be in a hurry. And listen, there was no one on this earth that ever had more to do. There was no one more sought after than Jesus. But Jesus never allowed hurriedness. He never allowed busyness to cut off his connection from what mattered most. We see this example of this in Mark chapter 5. In verse 21, it says, Jesus got into the boat again and went back to the other side of the lake, where a large crowd gathered around him on the shore. Then a leader of the local synagogue, whose name was Jairus, arrived. When he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet, pleading fervently with him. My little daughter is dying, he said. Please come and lay your hands on her. Heal her so she can live. Jesus went with him, and all the people followed, crowding around him. So Jesus is on his way to perform this miracle and to save this little girl's life. And if there is ever a moment in time where Jesus has the right to be in a hurry, if there's ever a moment where Jesus has every right to be in a rush, like I feel like he should be sprinting to Jairus' house to heal this little girl. This was the moment to be in a hurry. But look what happens next. It says in verse 25, a woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years, she had spent everything she had to pay them. But she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. She had heard about Jesus. So she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. Immediately the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of this terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him. So he turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my robe? His disciples said to him, look at the crowd pressing around you. How can you ask, who touched me? But he kept on looking around to see who had done it. Then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell to her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over. While he was speaking to her, messengers from the home of Jairus, the leader of the synagogue, arrived, and they told him, your daughter is dead. So Jesus is on his way to heal Jairus' daughter. And because he stops and has this conversation and he heals this lady with the bleeding issue, these messengers come and they say, hey, Jairus, your daughter is dead. There's no use in troubling the teacher now. But Jesus overheard them and said to Jairus, don't be afraid, just have faith. And the story, I won't read it now, the story goes on that Jesus goes and he heals Jairus' daughter. But even though Jesus was on his way to complete the important task of healing Jairus' daughter, he still didn't allow busyness and hurriedness to cut off his connection to what mattered most. Because it always amazes me how present and just in the moment that Jesus was with this woman who had the bleeding issue. But because I'm sure that Jairus was standing there and just like tapping his foot. I'm sure he's like throwing his hands up like, what in the world is going on? My daughter is sick, and I know I would have been. I would have been like, Jesus, let's go. Like we should be sprinting to my house. Instead, you're sitting here dealing with this woman. I know I would have been, because I get impatient and frustrated, not with a situation like this, but even little things, just like being on the road. One thing that makes me impatient, one thing that gets me in a rush and gets me in a hurry, is when I miss a red light because the people in front of me just mosey and take their own time. And so, yeah, there we go. So, especially when you're turning left, this is what always happens. So if you're like 5 or 6 cars back, and the person who is in the front, what will happen is the light will turn green. They'll wait a solid 3 seconds before even hitting the gas. And then when they go, they will literally just pull out like this right here. Just as slow as they possibly can. Why? Because they know they're going to make the light. And they could care less that you are going to miss the light because of them being that slow. So many times this will happen. And I'll be in my car and I'll just be like, let's go. Like selfish. Look how selfish this person is. And one time Colby looked at me and she was just like, why are you in such a rush when all we're doing is going home? And she was exactly right. Like in that moment, I remember I wasn't in a hurry to get to an important church meeting. I wasn't in a hurry and in a rush to get my boys to a ball game that they needed to be at. I was in a rush to get home and do nothing. To just get home and just sit. I had nothing on the agenda. I was just in a hurry and in a rush. And I find myself like this all the time. That I'm just rushing from one thing to the next, living in this constant state of being in a hurry. But when you look at the life of Jesus, this is not what we see. We don't see Jesus in a hurry or in a rush, but Jesus was always able to stay connected to what mattered, what truly mattered most. And that's why when this woman came, even though he was completing this unbelievably important task of healing this little girl, in the midst of that, this woman reaches out and touches him. And that's why Jesus was able to turn around and be fully present and fully in the moment with her, because in that moment, she was what was most important. And we see this pattern all throughout the life of Jesus. There was no one that was more busy, no one more sought after than Jesus, but he had never allowed his busyness to cut off his connection from what mattered most. Because even though Jesus had a ton to accomplish, and he only had 3.5 years, that's how long his ministry lasted, 3.5 years to accomplish all of that, he still always made sure that he had margin and he had breathing room in his schedule. He had breathing room in his life for what was most important. Before Jesus started his ministry and picked his 12 apostles, you would have thought that as soon as God said go, man, he would have grabbed his 12 apostles and just hit the ground running. But before he started his ministry, Jesus actually, the Spirit drives him into the wilderness, and Jesus goes into the wilderness for 40 days just to be alone with God and to fast and pray. And we see this pattern all throughout Jesus' ministry. The Bible says in the Gospels that Jesus would often, not every once in a while, but Jesus would often get away from the crowds. He would get away from even his disciples. He would remove himself from all of the noise, and he would just get alone to be with God the Father. Gospels tell us that several times that the disciples had to wake Jesus up because he was taking a nap. And so one time, the disciples are in a boat and a storm comes and the water's getting in and they think they're going to drown. Well, they look around and they're like, where in the world is Jesus? And they find him. Jesus is in the middle of a boat, knocked out. Jesus is in the middle of a boat, taking a nap. Now, that's a Jesus I can get on board with. Like, I like that Jesus. But Jesus took time to rest. And we also see all throughout the Gospels, Jesus would make time to spend uninterrupted quality time with the people around him. That he would take time to eat meals and to slow down and just be fully present and have deep conversations with the people that God had placed in his life. And Jesus would always take one day a week, one full day, to do nothing. He would take one full day a week just to rest and to worship on the Sabbath. And we see these rhythms of rest in the life of Jesus because Jesus knew that he was fully God, but at the same time, in his bodily form, he was also fully man. So Jesus' body had limits. He knew that he couldn't just go 24/7 because he would wear down just like you and I. So Jesus created margin and breathing room in his life so that he could be present for what mattered most. But so often we forget that the same way Jesus had limits, certainly you and I do as well. The same way that his body needed rest, our bodies need rest. Our minds, our bodies, our souls, that we have limits and we need rest. But when you and I, when we try to consistently live outside of those limits, eventually that will catch up to us, and that will lead to breakdown and burnout. That we are running 100 miles per hour, but we cannot keep up that pace. And we will slowly but surely start breaking down mentally and emotionally and spiritually until we burn out and we're just done. But this is not what Jesus wants for you and I. And that's why when Jesus said, "Follow me," he wasn't just calling us to follow his words, but he was also calling us to follow his ways. So if you want to experience the life of Jesus, then you have to adopt the lifestyle of Jesus. Jesus knew his limits, so he created margin and breathing room in his schedule. And that's why he was never in a rush. He was never in a hurry. He was able to be fully present and fully engaged with what was right in front of him. He was able to be fully present with what was most important. And so often we want that in our lives. So often we want a life filled with joy and peace. So often we want the life of Jesus, that he had a thriving relationship with God and thriving relationships with those around him. So often we want the life of Jesus, but the only way to experience the life of Jesus is to adopt the lifestyle of Jesus. It's like when you see someone in a movie and they are just, man, they're in good shape and they're shredded and they've got a six-pack, and you look at them and you say, man, I want that life. I want to look like that. I want that life. But then you get on the internet and you look up their diet, and all they eat is kale and all they drink is celery juice, and you're just like, you know what, a six-pack's really not that cool. And I'm married anyway, so what's it matter anymore? You look up their diet and you say, you know what? I'm not about that life. Like, I can't do that, because when you looked up their diet, you realized that the only way that you are going to be able to live their life is to adopt their lifestyle. And if you want to experience the life of Jesus, if you want to experience a life of peace and joy and love, then you have to adopt the lifestyle of Jesus and create margin and breathing room in your life. And this is the life that Jesus wants for you and I. He tells us this in Matthew chapter 11. Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." Jesus wants to give your mind, your body, and your soul rest. But notice how he doesn't do it. He doesn't offer us this through escapism. He says this in verse 29. "Take my yoke upon you, let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." A yoke is it's a wooden instrument you see here that is placed between two oxen as they are plowing and pulling together. So a yoke is an instrument of work. And Jesus offers us this because he's not an idealist, but he's a realist. He's not offering us an escape from everyday life and all of our problems. He's not offering us an escape from getting our work done and completing our to-do list. But he's offering us a yoke that is light and easy to bear. He's offering us a way to work and a way to live in the world that even when you face your problems and your pain, even when you complete your work and your to-do list, you will still have rest for your souls. Matthew chapter 11, the Message translation reads like this. This is so good. It says, "Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it." Now notice he doesn't say, hey, no more work, no more pain, but he says, walk with me and work with me. That instead of doing this alone, then I'm going to go with you. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. I love the line, learn the unforced rhythms of grace. That is so, so good. And this is what we see in the life of Jesus. We see Jesus walking in the unforced rhythms of grace. And this is what he has for you and I. God has grace and mercy for you to walk in each and every day of life. And over these next 4 weeks, we're going to look at four rhythms that we see in the life of Jesus. And these rhythms of rest, they will bring peace and joy to your soul if you will make breathing room and margin for them. And before you say, I can't, I'm too busy. I've got too much going on. Well, first I would ask, too busy doing what? Because sometimes the things that are keeping us from the things that are most important are just trivial things. Like, are you too busy with Netflix and social media? Are you too busy golfing, fishing, or shopping? And listen, I do those things. I love those things. But when we really look at our schedules, more often than not, we don't have a time issue. I don't have enough time. We don't have a time issue. Most of the time, we have a priority issue. But even if you're busy with things that truly matter, if you are too busy to read your Bible, if you're so hurried in life that you can't pray, if you are in such a rush that you can't do a devotional with your family and disciple them in Christ, then the bottom line is that you are too busy for what matters most. And that's why, if the devil can't make you bad, he will make you busy. Because both sin and busyness have the same effect. They both cut off our connection to what matters most. Busyness will cut off your connection from God. It will cut off your connection to your loved ones, and it will cut off your connection to your very own soul. Jesus knew his limits, so he created margin. He created breathing room in his life. That's why he was never in a hurry. He was never in a rush. But he always had time for what mattered most. And so often, we want that. We want a life filled with joy and peace like Jesus had. We want a life of thriving relationships with God and those around us. But we have to see that the only way to have the life of Jesus is to adopt the lifestyle of Jesus. We can't just follow his words. We have to follow his ways. And to follow him and walk with him in the unforced rhythms of his grace. So let's bow our heads and close our eyes. Jesus wants to ask you this morning, are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you weary or carrying heavy burdens? If that's you, then Jesus' invitation is simple. Come to me and walk with me in the unforced rhythms of grace so that you can find rest for your soul. If that's you this morning and you want to accept Jesus' invitation, and you want to lay down your burdens so that you can find rest for your soul, right where you're at, I just want you to raise your hand. This is just between you and God right now. I just want to lead you in a prayer in this moment. If you want to lay down busyness and hurriedness so that you can walk with Jesus in the unforced rhythms of grace, then I just want to lead you in a prayer right now. Just repeat after me. Say, Jesus, I'm tired. I'm worn out. I'm carrying heavy burdens. But right now I come and I lay them all down at your feet. Jesus, I bring my cares to you because I know that you care for me. So Jesus, in you, give me rest. In you, give me peace. In you, give me joy. In you, help me to slow down and be fully present with what matters most. Jesus, thank you that your burden is light and your yoke is easy to bear. And with it, I will find rest for my soul. In Jesus' name, amen. If you're here